mission to truthfully go where no news will have been going before. And from Arab news, Palestine angers as Israel allows settlers to return to 4 outposts, and the West Bank intensifies ahead of Ramadan. Palestinians on Tuesday voiced outrage after Israel approved a law that will allow Zionist occupiers to rebuild 4 West Bank outposts evacuated almost 2 decades ago. A bill overturning the so-called separation law in the West Bank and Gaza Strip was approved by an Israeli parliamentary plenary on Monday. Zionists evacuated occupation sites in occupied northern West Bank as part of the disengagement plan from Gaza in 2005. Nabil Abu Rudaini, the spokesperson for the Palestinian presidency, condemned the Knesset's move, which he said violates all resolutions of international legitimacy, especially which considers all settlements illegal in all Palestinian territories. Abu Rudaina said that the Zionist government is working to thwart international efforts to prevent escalation. He called on the international community, especially the U.S. administration, to pressure the Israeli government to stop its unilateral policies that violate international laws and signed agreements. Jibril Rajoub, the Fatah Central Committee Secretary General, told Arab News that settlers were trying to return to their Homesh settlement even before the law was passed. He accused Zionist Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of ignoring the agreements of the Aqaba summit 3 weeks ago. It's likely that neither he nor his government will abide by the understandings of the Sharm el-Sheikh summit, and that tension will inevitably come during Ramadan, Rajoub told Arab News. Ahmed Majdalani, Palestinian Minister of Social Development, said that the Israeli law's continuation of the Zionist government settlement expansion program. Palestinians view Zionist occupation expansion as an existential threat to this two-state solution, which they've demanded since 1967. More than 650,000 Zionist occupiers live in the West Bank and East Jerusalem in more than 150 occupation sites, all considered illegal by the UN and under international resolutions. Former senior diplomat Nasser al-Kidwa told Arab News that it's clear Zionists will quickly annex the West Bank. He added perhaps the worst thing about it is that the Palestinian Authority gives it political cover by accepting to participate with it in the Aqaba and Sharm el-Sheikh meetings instead of boycotting and isolating it and asking the world not to deal with it. The Saudi Ministry of Foreign Affairs expressed the kingdom's condemnation and denunciation of offensive and racist statements made by an official of the Zionist occupation government against Palestine and its people. They also renewed the kingdom's support for international efforts aimed at resolving the Palestinian issue based on the Arab Peace Initiative and ensuring the establishment of Palestinian state of the 1967 borders with East al-Quds at its capital. Meanwhile, Zionist occupiers, extremists from the price tag group wrote racist slogans pointing at a 6-point star on the truck and 2 vehicles and damaged more than 5 vehicles in the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood in Jerusalem on Tuesday, according to Palestinian sources. Anwar al-Jalani, a neighborhood resident, said that the Zionist police came to his house in the morning demanding he checked the surveillance cameras and then confiscated the recording device from family members. He added that police told him that the 2 occupiers vandalized cars and wrote slogans at 3 a.m. Zionists repeal law that sanctions 4 West Bank occupation sites. The Zionist occupation makes a U-turn on a law adopted in 2005 to strip Palestinians of even more land by legalizing 4 occupation sites in the West Bank. The Zionist Knesset on Tuesday rescinded legislation ordering the evacuation of 4 settlements in the occupied West Bank 18 years after it was passed. The original law mandated the evacuation of 4 illegal Zionist occupation sites in the northern West Bank, as well as Tel Aviv's disengagement from the Gaza Strip, marking one of the first major moves taken by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's highly controversial far-right cabinet. The law being repealed would allow Israelis to return to the settlement in question on condition by approval of the Zionist occupation military. The Zionist occupations established some 140 settlements on UN-recognized Palestine territory since the 1967 War of Aggression at the hands of the government and dozens of others at the hands of illegal Zionist occupiers. The majority of the world sees the Zionist occupation sites as illegal in accordance with international law and insists that their expansion is an obstacle to peace. The head of the Zionist Knesset Foreign Affairs and Security Committee, Yuli Edelstein, hailed the move as the first and significant step towards real repair and the establishment of Israel in the territories of the homeland that belongs to it. This comes after the Egyptian Foreign Ministry said on Sunday that the Zionist occupation and the Palestinian Authority agreed during a security meeting in Egypt's Sharm el-Sheikh to establish a mechanism to curb violence and counter inflammatory statements and actions. Sharm el-Sheikh hosted a five-sided meeting between the PA, the Israeli occupation, Egypt, Jordan, and the U.S. aimed at de-escalation in the region. It's noteworthy that the same provision was included in the concluding statement of the Aqaba meeting that was held by a Jordan couple a few weeks ago. However, Zionist occupation Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu later confirmed that the construction of the settlement outposts in the West Bank will continue without change. On February 15th, the Zionist occupation cabinet approved the construction of more than 7,000 illegal settler units in the occupied West Bank, with the Palestinian Information Center revealing the exact number of the planned units at 7,032. Under international law, all Israeli settlements are illegal, and the United Nations Security Council has condemned Zionist settlement activities in the occupied territories in several resolutions. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said in late February that the Zionist-built settlements are illegal and they must stop. All settlement activities are illegal under international law and it must stop, Guterres said to the UN members, adding that at the same time, incitement to violence is a dead end. Nothing justifies terrorism. It must be rejected by all. The Israeli occupation government announced a week earlier its decision to legalize non-illegal settlements outposts or occupation outposts in the occupied West Bank and initiate a project to build some 10,000 houses for illegal Zionist occupiers on a UN-recognized occupied Palestine territory. The foreign ministers of France, Italy, and Germany and the secretaries of state of the United States and the United Kingdom opposed Tel Aviv's plan to expand its illegal occupation sites in occupied West Bank. The United Nations Security Council expressed its dismay with the Israel occupation government's plans to legalize settlements in an occupied Palestinian territory. The UNSC issued a statement warning that these measures impede peace. The Zionist occupation was quick to criticize the declaration as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu claimed it denied the historic rights of the Jewish people. Furthermore, the occupation's premier's office said the statement fails to mention the Palestinian terror attacks that took place over the past few weeks in reference to the resistance operations that were conducted against illegal Zionist occupiers in various places all over Palestine. According to the Sharm el-Sheikh meeting statement, that the Palestinian Authority and the Israeli occupation reaffirmed their commitment to all previous agreements between them, in particular the legal right of the Palestinian National Authority to carry out the security responsibilities in Area A of the West Bank. The Zionist occupation and the PA also agreed to establish a mechanism to take the necessary steps toward improving the economic conditions of the Palestinian people per previous agreements and to significantly enhance the fiscal situation of the Palestinian National Authority.
Your inconsistencies are glaringly obvious.
And from aa.com.tr, EU calls on Zionists to revoke law allowing resettlement in evacuated areas of West Bank. New amendment would enable 10,000 Zionists to resettle 4 outposts in northern occupied West Bank. The European Union on Tuesday criticized the decision by the Zionist Knesset or Parliament to annul part of 2005 law that ordered Zionist residents to evacuate from 4 illegal settlements in the occupied West Bank, urging it to step back from the move. In a statement, EU Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell's office said that repealing the legislation affects efforts to de-escalate tensions and prevents the possibility of taking confidence-building measures, reminding the Parliament of the EU's stance on Zionist which are illegal occupations, which are illegal under international law. The statement noted that these settlements are an obstacle to peace and threaten the two-state solution. It also called on Israel to revoke a law passed in Parliament Tuesday, which would enable 10,000 Zionists to reoccupy 4 outposts in the northern occupied West Bank that were evacuated in 2005: Homesh, Sanur, Kadam, and Ghanem. And from AssumeTech.com, West Bank settlements return approved by Israel but raising concern in America. West Bank occupations return approved by Zionist government but raising concern in America. It seems that recent Zionist moves have widened the gap between Tel Aviv and Washington, which has recently expressed its disappointment with the moves of Zionist Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government, despite the historical alliance between the two parties. After Zionist parliament, the Knesset paved the way for the return of Zionist occupiers Tuesday, in 4 settlements in the occupied West Bank by amending a law passed in 2015 ordering the evacuation from these occupations. The United States condemned U.S. Department Deputy Spokesman Vedant Patel said Washington was extremely disturbed by the Knesset's move, emphasizing his country's position that the continued creation of occupation sites constitutes an obstacle to peace and the achievement of a two-state solution. At a time of heightened tension, the announced Zionist legislative changes are particularly provocative and counterproductive to efforts to restore a measure of calm as we approach Ramadan, Passover, and Easter. He added in statements to reporters last night. In turn, the European Union denounced the Knesset's decision, saying it's been counterproductive to truce efforts and it's a clear step backwards on the road to resolving the Zionist-Palestine conflict. Voting in the Knesset, one of prime big moves by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's far-right coalition, came days after Zionist and Palestinian officials agreed on steps to curb violence and incitement amid rising tensions. Interestingly, the repeal of some provisions of the previous disengagement law will allow the Jewish population to return in 4 occupations in West Bank after they were evacuated in 2005 subject to the approval of the Zionist military. Since the 1976 war, Zionists have established some 140 settlements on land Palestinians consider an essential part of establishing their future state, and more than 500,000 occupiers now live there. In addition to the authorized settlements, group of occupiers have established dozens of outposts without government permission. While most world powers consider settlements or occupations built on lands occupied by Israel in the 1976 war illegal under international law, and believe that their expansion prevents the peace because it leads to the erosion of the lands Palestine is demanding to establish for their future state on. And from thenationalnews.com, U.S. conveys its concerns over Zionist move to repeal law banning West Bank settlements. Meeting with Ambassador to Washington comes days after Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich denied the existence of the Palestinians. The U.S. has conveyed its concerns to Zionist Ambassador to Washington Michael Herzog over legislation that repeals a ban on occupation or occupiers from entering some northern areas of the occupied West Bank. Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman and Mr. Herzog discussed the importance of all sides refraining from actions or rhetoric that could further inflame tensions leading into the Ramadan, Passover, and Easter holidays, the U.S. State Department said on Tuesday. However, Zionist Army Radio described the meeting as a summoning. Former U.S. Ambassador to Zionist Martin Indyk said he did not remember the last time the U.S. State Department formally summoned an Israeli ambassador. Earlier, the U.S. described the Zionist move to repeal the 2005 disengagement law as provocative and counterproductive. The far-right Zionist Minister of National Missions, Orit Strak, told news website Arutz 7 on Tuesday that she thought the sin of the disengagement would be reversed. I don't know how long it will take. Sadly, a return to the Gaza Strip will involve many casualties, just as the departure from the Gaza Strip came with many casualties, but ultimately it's part of the land of the Zionist, and the day will come when we'll return to it.
Your inconsistencies are glaringly obvious. What is this nothing you talk about?
Meanwhile, Zionist forces launched wide-ranging raids overnight in a number of occupied West Bank cities, including Ramallah, Nablus, Jericho, and Bethlehem, a day before the start of Ramadan on Thursday, activists said. Earlier this week, Zionist right-wing finance ministers Smotrich drew international condemnation after making comments that effectively denied the existence of Palestine. And the U.S., Israel's closest ally, and the UAE condemned Mr. Smotrich's comments. From MENAFN.com, Israeli forces conduct wide-ranging raids in West Bank cities ahead of Ramadan. Zionist forces conduct raids in several cities in the occupied West Bank, including Ramallah, Nablus, Jericho, and Bethlehem on Wednesday, a day before the start of Ramadan, according to activists. Tear gas was fired by Zionist forces near a hospital in Ramallah, while in Jericho, one person was arrested and another was injured by gunfire in Al-Khalil. Zionist forces reportedly raided tens of houses and detained at least 4 individuals. Meanwhile, in Nablus, Zionist forces detained 2 brothers of a member of the Lions Den resistance group as they sought to put pressure on him to surrender himself. The raids came after the U.S. called Israel's ambassador to Washington to voice its concerns over legislation advancing the return of settlers to areas in the northern part of the occupied West Bank, which surround Nablus and Jenin. These areas have been the epicenter of a new generation of Palestinian militancy in the past 18 months. U.S. officials emphasized the importance of all parties refraining from actions of rhetoric that could further inflame tensions during the upcoming religious holidays. Recently, and from Ruetir.com, during Ramadan, Zionists restrict Palestinians from entering Al-Aqsa Mosque. Palestinians cleaned the Al-Aqsa Mosque complex ahead of the month of Ramadan in Jerusalem, while Israeli or Zionist announced various restrictions of Palestinians during the holy month of Ramadan regarding entering Al-Aqsa Mosque. The report was revealed by the Anadolu news agency. Women of all ages, boys up to 12, and men over 55 are allowed to enter the Al-Aqsa Mosque during Ramadan without permission, said a statement by the Coordination of Regional Government Activities. So, I mean, that's, you consider what exactly it is that they're saying there. They're telling you who is permitted, but who is not permitted. So if women of all ages, boys up to 12, and men over 55 are not permitted, then that means men from 12 to 55 or 13 to 54. Excuse me, if they say that women of all ages, boys up to 12, and men over 55 are allowed to be in Al-Aqsa Mosque during Ramadan without permission, then who needs permission? Those 13 to 54 who are men. I mean, that's a simpler way of saying it. It's really just roundabout, and just like false framing to, yeah. And it says here, Zionists will apply the permit to men aged 45 to 55, he said. Zionist officials also said security approval is required for Palestinians in the West Bank to visit their relatives in the 48 territories or for foreigners to visit their relatives in the West Bank. He stressed working hours will be increased at various West Bank crossings during the month of Ramadan, With respect to the Gaza Strip, according to the statement, Zionists imposed restricted quotas for women aged 50 and over and men aged 55 and over from Sunday to Thursday to enter Al-Aqsa Mosque. Tensions have been running high in the West Bank in recent months amid repeated Zionist military raids on Palestinian cities. Nearly 90 Palestinians have been killed by Zionist fire since the State of the Year, according to Palestine figures. 14 Zionists also died in separate attacks during the same period.
Yahoo!